Hello, everyone. Very happy to be live with C F Barrington. Chris, as he's otherwise known. You're going to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your books to begin with?
Sure. Thank you, Kaz, and hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm CF for Chris Barrington. I'm, in a sense, a debut author, and actually my third book is coming out in September, but it's all part of the same series, and the last two have just come out over the last year, so I still feel very much a newbie and a debut author. My series is called the Pantheon series. It's all set in Edinburgh and the Highlands of Scotland. The book one, which came out in spring last year, is The Wolf Mile, with a nice sort of image of, or slightly alternative image of Edinburgh Castle. And book two, which came out earlier this year, is The Blood Isles, which where some of the action moves more towards the Hebrides and the Highlands. The premise of the book, and in a way it seems to cross over various genres. I've found myself talking on horror podcasts. I've done a number of crime things, but I've also, in Waterstones, they've got me under sci-fi. So it's one of those books that seems to edge into different things. But it's very much a bloody Scotland crime sort of story, in that there's an awful lot of illegal killings in it. And I think that's the basis of what crime is. So the Pantheon is basically the world's biggest illegal underground game. And it's been created by the richest people on earth for their entertainment, really, having got bored with the other things they do, like buy football teams and their private islands. And I think I had that idea because in ancient Rome, the rich very much their entertainment was to go to the gladiatorial games and look at these blood sports and so forth. And so this, in a sense, is a modern day blood sport. And it's set in 7 different cities. And two of the teams, there are 7 teams, and 2 of the teams, which are based on different ancient warrior races, are located in Edinburgh. So one on the rooftops and one in the tunnels underneath the Royal Mile. And it's basically all about the main characters being initiated into this underground game and their experiences as they rise through the ranks and the different challenges that they face. And I think, for me, the big criminal element in it and running through it is actually that it's the rich, it's the founders, it's the real wealthy people who have very often made their money in ways that perhaps are above the law. And it's a sort of sense of that the law is being bought by these very wealthy people, and the police forces and security forces are innovated so that these games can actually take place. And that's basically the premise of it.
Sounds good. Do you have a bit of a love of kind of Roman and Viking history?
Yeah, I think so. I probably grew up as mostly a history fan. From being a teenager, I read a lot of history fiction, and that's developed since then. I read much more widely now, and but I've always liked the idea of trying to write history, and I think actually I was a bit nervous about that I would be accurate enough to just produce a historical novel. When I first sort of sat down and thought I'd try and write something, I thought, oh, I'm not going to get the details right. The research won't be up to scratch. So this concept that you could bring history into the modern world in some form or other, and I didn't want to do a time slip novel. I wanted to do something that was different. And so this idea that you can have these gladiatorial games, that you can bring these warrior races back to life and throw them at each other, sort of allows me to combine all the history, but actually I can sort of play it into the modern era in a nice way, so it doesn't have to be absolutely amazingly accurate either in some respects. Now, having said that, I try to make the battles and the equipment and everything else as historically accurate as I possibly could. But there are scenes when a warrior might be having a cappuccino down in the tunnels underneath the old city before the battles commence. So it's a twist on history very much.
I like books like that. Have you ever read Alison Morton?
No. What did she write?
She writes a series called the Roma Nova series, and I absolutely love them. And they're sort of the premise that Rome never collapsed.
Oh yeah, yes.
Didn't. So it exists to this day, but it's like a matriarchal kind of society. So women have the positions of power.
So it's an alternative history, as in Rome stayed the superpower for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah, kind of an alternative. It's not a superpower, but it still exists as like a country and state. And like so it's modern, but there's like modern Romans living in a kind of Roman society.
Yeah,
And I really like those. I think they're great.
Oh, I'll give that a try. That sounds a lot of fun. Yeah.
So Sam and Tony have said hello to you.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I should be looking at that. Thank you. Hi both.
You don't have to look at that. It's fine. Sam said she saw a comment. It took you 20 years. You don't even look like it took you 20 years. 20 years to get stuck in and write. How did you get past the obstacles in your way?
Oh wow. You know, I did write a couple of books at different points during my life, but then there were like massively long periods in between. I tried writing something rather precociously at about, I think I was about 17, and I tried writing a historical fiction novel, and I remember my granddad typing it up on an old typewriter for me, and I sent it off to a few of the children's publishers and got some really nice feedback that sort of made me feel as if there was good stuff there, scope, but it wasn't, you know, quite for them at that point. And then I let about 10 years go by, and I wrote something else, and managed to get an agent for that, but didn't quite hit the publishing button. And then I let another sort of 15 years drift, or whatever it's been. And I think really I was just focused on my career, and there never felt time to sit down and try and do something like this. The sheer size of the project, I'm in awe of actually how many writers are out there who are juggling so much in their lives and still managing to put words down on the screen. And I think to be honest, I moved up to Edinburgh, and I had a job at Edinburgh Zoo, which was fun while it lasted. But then I decided to call that in, and I went back to a bit of consultancy, and I did that part-time for a while. And it was during that period that I realized I had the time to think about writing in the other hours. And it sort of just combined with being in Edinburgh. If I'd not moved to Edinburgh to take that job, I would have never created this story, because there's just something about Edinburgh. It's in the old town. It's so claustrophobic and dark. It's full of this black, bloody history, and there are rumours all about the tunnels that run beneath the Mile, and the rooftops are sort of unending as they go off over the old buildings. You can imagine whole worlds up there that on the street level you wouldn't know about. So if I'd been working in Birmingham or something, I would have just never have dreamed up this particular concept. So it just came together at that point. A little bit of time on my hands, and suddenly the inspiration, and it sort of went quite well from there. The Wolf Mile only took me about 4 months to actually complete, so it poured out of me when I actually got started on it. But then there were quite a lot of barriers to getting it through to an agent and then through to publication. It's a tough business, it feels like, for new authors these days. So it's taken a little while. And now, as I say, I'm on book 3 and just writing, or book 3 is about to launch, just writing book 4 as we speak, which is the last in the series. Does that answer it for you, Sam and Gaz?
It does, and it answers my second question, which was going to be, do you have like an end to the series? Because it feels like it's going to have an obvious end. And you said book 4 is going to be it.
It is, yes. I think it is. I quite like to leave it in one of those points where, you know, if I ever wanted to come back to it, I could take it forward. But I think it's the right place to stop. It's the story arc reaches its culmination in book 4, and I'm ready for something new. My publishers want to contract me into a new series, and this will given me artistic license to think what that is, and that's rather exciting me to just really start afresh with a brand new story again as well. So you get to a point, and I love these characters. I have to finish their lives. They're sort of part of me and so forth. You have to complete the story, but I'm also ready to try something different, because 4 books, yeah, it's quite a lot. You know, in a way, it might be simpler to be writing just a single book each time with a completely different story.
Would you write another series, or would you just go standalone?
I don't know. What I'm going to do is, which you don't have the, you're not able to do so when you're a debut author. You're just sitting there thinking up on your own. But I'm going to be quizzing my agent and quizzing the publishers to really get their thoughts on what's the right type of next story, and the genre and so forth, and whether it would be better to write a single book or not. I've had a couple of ideas, but both those ideas are quite big. I seem to think of these things that have quite large story arcs, so they would be series. But if the publisher said, oh, it would make sense to do a one-off single book first and then go into that series, I'd take their advice. So I'm trying not to think about it too much, because I've got to finish book 4 by the end of the year, and I don't want to be having too many different non-Pantheon thoughts out there at the moment.
Would you keep it being historical?
I love a bit of history in there, but I still quite like the quirkiness of the modern. And I'm trying to think of things. I would be quite interested in something that's a modern crime, but has, I know everything's been done before in a way. It's impossible to find totally unique things, but has something where maybe the killings are done in historical ways, or there's a historical theme running through it that I quite like. I'm toying with something like that at the moment. So history, I just find that fun, but I want to try and avoid stepping too far into the fantasy genre. The Pantheon is a little bit dystopian in that it isn't really. The setting is completely in the modern, normal Edinburgh. The only dystopian or slightly alternative thing about it is the police haven't rounded up these gangs right in the first week of its existence. That's the only thing that's really isn't realistic. But I don't want to go further into the fantasy genre, and so I would definitely want to write something that was locked into just the normal probably modern Britain.
Fair enough. Sam's asked how you manage a work-life balance. All answers appreciated, because I struggle to manage a work balance at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Have I got an answer to that? I don't know whether I've got a very good answer to that, Sam, because I'm lucky enough at the moment to still be working part-time. It's not at all good in this economic crisis, and I may need to rethink that. But I'm doing so I've been a fundraising manager for various charities and universities through my career, and just in the last few years I took that more into a consultancy position, and that allows me to pick and choose my hours a little bit more. So I'm spending about 3 days a week working, and then it gives me a bit more time to try and write, because I don't know whether I could write and have a completely 5-day-a-week job and everything else that goes on in life. So work-life balance is a tough one for writers. Obviously, the dream is to become a full-time writer, but that also takes quite a while. And I've had various author associates who've been saying to me, it's usually 10 or 11 books that you need to be published before you're getting enough trickle of income to even consider that you might be a full-time writer. So I'm only on the 3rd one, so I've only got 2 out of the moment, so I've got quite a way to go on that. So tough, but and that's why I've started quite late in life. I think for me, as I said, amazing that others don't. The previous book I wrote about 10 years ago, I did just do after hours in the office, actually. So I suppose I did do that. I used to finish off about 5:30, and once the office gradually emptied, I managed to switch over and write for about 2 hours every night before going home. I suppose, if you don't leave your workplace, that can be a way to do it. That's not a very useful answer, I'm sorry.
So Aggie and Patsy have said hello.
Hello, both.
So the Pantheon, there's a few different teams, isn't there? Do you go and do we meet any of those?
The different teams, absolutely.
Yeah. So we see the ones in Edinburgh, like the main 2 ones.
That's right.
Yours. But do we ever go and visit the other ones?
We do. I sort of trying to broaden the scope with each book. So it starts off a little bit smaller. So the first one is very much in Edinburgh, all sorts of challenges and riddles and battles that go on in the streets in Edinburgh between what are basically the Viking team. They're called Palatinates because the whole of the game is based around Roman organization. So they are the Valhalla Horde, and they are based in the tunnels underneath the Royal Mile. I love the idea that there are supposed to be lots of tunnels. So the idea that the wealthy who fund this game could so easily tunnel them further, make them bigger, build these halls underneath the ground, all sorts of things that could go on under there. So there's a real warren underneath the Royal Mile. And then there's the Titan Palatinate, which is based on Alexander's ancient Greeks and hoplites, which is on the rooftops. I've imagined 4 different strongholds up there. And again, because really tried to think, well, what could be going on up there? One of the strongholds has got a lovely glass dome and a Mediterranean garden in it where Alexander himself hangs out, and I like the idea of that. The others, the story sort of expands and has to expand gradually as the different challenges are successfully achieved. And so we do, the Mongol horsemen feature in book 3, along with the Legion, which is the Roman Palatinate. And there's the Chinese, the Warring States. There's the Sultanate, based in Istanbul, but in Constantinople in a sense. And there's the Huns, Attila the Hun, on the Pannonian Plains in eastern side of Hungary. So, and they all feature, and sort of in true Lord of the Rings style, we start off in the Shire, and by the time we're in book 4, everybody's hammering everybody for all it's worth.
Sounds good. Patricia's saying you should come to Edinburgh. She has the maps.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, I think there's maps in the front of each one, and I've tried to be really true to the modern city, spent a lot of time going around all the different places, planning where the action would take place, finding little graffiti riddled doorways, which would be the entrances into the tunnels, thinking about where the security cameras would be. As I say, there's a number of riddles that they have to achieve, so dreaming those up and what they have to do around the city to find those while being attacked by the other Palatinates. And so I just had a lot of fun trying to do that for Edinburgh. And I went out with a friend to develop my website, and he got very excited and went off with his camera. And I think half of the places he went are not legal. He was climbing over walls and onto rooftops to get all the best angles possible, but came out quite nicely on the screen in the end.
Have you visited the sites of your other Palatinates?
Some of them, but not all. No, I wish I had. So I've been to Rome, and I've been to Istanbul, and a long time ago I went to Athens in Greece. But I must admit I'm making it up when it comes to the Mongols and the Warring States in China. But it seems to be, I think it can be that way quite often. I'm talking with another historical author about that, who's got many more books out, and he says it's all Google Maps these days. It's all Google Maps and Google, and you can find so much and look at it, I suppose, from above as such. You can really write about things that you haven't necessarily visited. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think my visits to Istanbul or visits to Rome, you generate something. You get a sense of the city in a way that is not physical, and you can't get on the internet. The temperature and the sounds and the smells and the whole feel of the culture. And so, if I could have visited the others, that would be wonderful. But the publishers don't provide the budget to go to these places, unfortunately.
Istanbul is it's very unique, isn't it? I love the smell of the spice bazaar when you walk.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Where did you say that was? In Istanbul? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's just it. You really a real sense of that. And I was trying to hold on to that. I'd hoped I might go back again, because I wanted to that it features in book 3, which I wrote last year. But the pandemic sort of put paid to that, and so I felt a little bit more rusty about that one. But in terms of having to really just rely on memory of those sort of things, the smell of the spices and the sounds and so forth.
Sam has asked how you prepare for publication day.
Wow, how do I prepare for publication day? I'm not sure, actually.
They're tricky questions as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I need to think about that, so I make sure I've got a plan for book 3, which is 1st of September. How do I do it? I suppose I try and follow some of the guidance as to, make as much noise as you can in the run up to it. So both times that I've received the box of the hard copies of the books, I've videoed that, opening it and looking at the books, and that seems to have gone down quite well online, and that is just an amazing experience. But I mean, actually publication day, maybe the bigger authors have big events, but for the smaller authors it's really just about getting a card from your loved ones and maybe opening a bottle of bubbly and clinking glasses and thinking that it's out there, and then the hard work is all about promoting it beyond that and trying to get it noticed and so forth. It's nice with a series because you realize there are readers who've already read the first ones that are really already pre-ordering, and so you feel there's a sense of excitement amongst those who've read it that they'll be receiving that book on that day, and that's rather special as well, knowing that all those people are getting it. And I get quite a few photos through from readers with the book on their coffee table or whatever on the day of publication or just after. So that's really nice. But yeah, it makes me think I need to prepare more for publication day. I better have a proper think about
that. Patricia said, which tribe set the gorse up on Calton Hill last night?
Oh yeah, oh yes, absolutely. There's been a big fire. I'm not in Edinburgh or in Fife at the moment, so I only saw it online, but there's been a fire up on Calton Hill, which is one of the main central hills in Edinburgh, and where quite a few of the old monuments are. And there's a big scene up there in the first book, in the Wolf Mile. And so I'm not sure which it will be. I should think it will be the Vikings, Patricia. I should think that's their style. They'll have been flushing out some of those Greek titans.
Who's a favourite character that you've created?
You'd think it would be the protagonist, in a sense, because he was the one that you've taken all the way through, and in many respects the story charts his growth. He's very much in a bad way when he's first recruited. His mother's been killed in a hit and run. His sister's disappeared. He's just surviving on one of the council estates in Edinburgh. He's doing small-time drugs deals, and he's been beaten up by the local gang. And it's at that point that he gets recruited into the Pantheon. So he couldn't have more of a growth curve if he tried, because he sort of really does develop in that. But I think the characters I'm more proud of, there's a main female character who I almost feel by book 2, I think she's an equal protagonist. And being a man, I think I was a bit more insecure about whether I could write a female character reasonably well. And I was really pleased when my agent, my publishers and others commented that the female characters were really strong. And I feel that I'm proud of the journey I'm taking her on. And then there's also a 12-year-old boy who was supposed to just be a complete bit part in book 1. He was a useful neighbor to my protagonist, and he was a real geek and whiz on the computers. So he was helping solve the riddles that the Pantheon was setting. And that was supposed to be it. But so many people said to me they loved Oliver, this kid. They loved him, and where was he going? And so at the beginning of each book, I've had to really work hard with him, because I can't have him just continuing to be some kid that answers riddles on a laptop. He has to really get involved in the Pantheon, and that has proved challenging. But I think I've managed it. So I've taken him on a very different route into the pantheon as through they have scholars where they bring in very young recruits and train them up, again highly secretive, and mostly these are children that are lost in the system in the modern world, and are never noticed when they disappear. So it brought in an element I wasn't intending to write about at all, actually, but so that was quite fun, a character that readers wanted me to continue with, and so you have to adapt your plans accordingly.
So Aggie's got a really good question. She says, if you had to name one book that made a massive impact on who you are today, what book would it be and why?
Oh Lord, Aga. It's really tough, isn't it? Because some of those books are the ones that perhaps everyone says, or that, you know, I was trying to think if there's ones that are more interesting.
Just go with your honest answer.
Well, I suppose growing up, the book that affected me most was Lord of the Rings. Even though I'm not particularly a fantasy reader, there was something epic and amazing and incredible about that was a milestone in my reading. But there's been others. I read Last of the Mohicans, and was absolutely entranced by that. And I think I read that 3 times, and there's barely any books that I've read more than once. So I found that very special. More recently, Gregory, he wrote Shantaram, which was like a modern, real criminal story based in India. And I've never read someone with more amazing, glorious prose. He's quite a phenomenon that he is really a criminal in real life, and has had to change his name, I think, and a variety of other things to keep away from the gangs and the law enforcement, and yet he's able to write like an angel. And it was truly beautiful. I think I read his first book sometime before I read The Wolf Mile, so that probably had a big impact on me.
What have you read this year that you've really enjoyed?
This year, I've read the 2 authors that I'm reading most at the moment are a chap called Giles Christian, who he writes. So I'm partly reading them in a way because of what I'm now writing. So he writes Viking sagas. He also used to be in a boy band, which is rather interesting. He started off in a boy band, and quite a well-known boy band, and then turned into this writer. And I find his writing brilliant. He is incredibly good at very, very, very bloody battle scenes, and seems to know the art of how a blade can be used against a body. But he's also got very lyrical writing. He's in the quieter points. He writes beautifully. And then there's also an American writer called Pierce Brown, who's written a series called Red Rising. And I'd never heard of him, actually. I mean, he's massively successful, but I'd never heard of him. And then my publishers put up the marketing spiel for my books on Amazon, and one of the sentences was for fans of Red Rising. So I thought, well, I better find out what Red Rising is and compare and contrast. And he's written a series. They're all set in the future. They're actually science fiction, space age novels, but they're based on, a bit like you were saying about earlier, Kaz, they're based on a Roman organization, or the society is organized around Roman principles. And so in some respects was similar to my idea with the game being organized in Roman ways. And he is just a brilliant storyteller as well. I've found him amazing. And I wonder if it's affecting my writing, because he is very, very abrupt, I think was the word, really pacey, really, he just writes the bare necessity. There's not much flowery description. And I think my writing is beginning to develop more that way. Book 3 is more punchy than book 1. And so I'm sure you pick up and are inspired by what you read, and you find whether it's conscious or not that it starts to affect the way you write yourself.
Patricia is saying she failed higher physics twice because she read Lord of the Rings instead of studying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, Gregory David Roberts, that's it. he's a fantastically brilliant writer.
I'm gonna,
I wish I had one sentence that was as good as his.
I hate to be the sole voice against it, but I have read Lord of the Rings mostly for a bet.
Oh yeah, was it for you? No. When did you read it? How long ago?
I read it as an adult, and
Okay.
after I'd seen the first movie, which I also really didn't like. It's just, yeah.
I mean, I read them both when I was quite young, or early teens. So I read it both times at that sort of period, and I'm not sure it would affect me in the same way now. I don't think I'd go back and read it. It was quite magical as a youngster, but once you've got the that adult persona on, you start wondering what the point of all these dwarves are and things like that.
So, one of my favorite author chat questions to ask is, would you make a graphic novel of one of your books?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, I wouldn't. I haven't got a clue how to do it, but if someone offered, I'd love that. Yeah, because I think they really fit into that area in some respects. Some of my friends have been saying I need to get more into the cosplay arena as well. All these conventions where everybody's dressed up, because in some respects these books are sort of the ultimate cosplay. They are gangs of killers who are dressed accurately, either as Vikings or Romans or Greeks, and so yeah, they would come across wonderfully in a graphic novel. I'd love to I'd love that, and the blood would be, and the violence would come across really well as well. So if you've got any connections, anyone out there,
Gonna love a bit of cosplay. One of my favorite ones I ever saw at Comic-Con was, I think there were two people in it, two people as an AT-AT from Star Wars.
oh yes, brilliant. And they actually managed to get the legs done properly as well, did they?
Yeah, no, or what's the ones that look like they've got 4 legs? They were that one,
I think that's.
and they were like inside it,
Yeah.
so you couldn't see the people. It just genuinely looked like one of those walking around. It was amazing.
So like the old zebra costumes, as it were, but with yeah, exactly, with 4 legs.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
it's so good. We're really, really good. Like, they've put so much effort into it. Still one of my favourites. One of my other favourite author chat questions is, have you ever acted out a scene?
Oh, not formally, as in once a scene is written, I stand there and prance about and pretend I'm acting it. But I sort of do when I'm writing it or when I'm thinking about it. I go for quite a lot of walks and runs, and I find that that's where I get my best creativity. And I might have got the actual scene in my mind already, but I start speaking the potential conversation between two characters just while I'm out walking, and I try and do it. I think I do it out loud. Certainly, obviously, do it mentally, but I try and do it out loud as well, because I want to try and get the wording to feel the most accurate, actually coming out through your lips, and so it feels like what someone would actually say rather than necessarily how you would write it. So I do that quite a bit. And I suppose it's not quite acting it out again, but I've gone round the routes. I've followed routes when I think a particular character is going through this route in the city to find something, and I've followed it through. So I've been that character, tried to move at the speed they might have been going, so I could see the time that it would take, think about the views that they would be seeing, and what they need to do to find whatever it is they're looking for. So I'm living the character at that moment, I suppose, and doing something physical. That's sort of acting some of it. Yeah.
We've had authors who've like held things to their throats, locked themselves in car boots to see what it was like.
Oh.
Acted out fights on Whitby Pier.
Well,
it's
I know.
A great question to ask. You get some brilliant answers.
That is. Well, that makes me feel quite bad, because I've never sort of found an actual sword and attempted to find a tutor or something and think through what it would be like to be in a sword fight. And my biggest, most grievous error, I suppose, or it's not an error, but what I have, my biggest omission, is that all of this takes place all the action takes place between 1 and 3 in the morning, during winter months in the centre of Edinburgh. And the game takes place on these different nights at that time. And I have to admit, I don't think I've been in the Royal Mile between 1 and 3 in the morning on a winter's night. And so I'll probably find I'm making assumptions as to how many people and passers-by and other things are going on. I'll probably find it's much more crowded than I'd realised, and I've tried to imagine it relatively empty at that time. So that is bad of me, actually, when I hear what you've just said that other authors have done to ensure they get some realism.
What was your research like then for your books? Do you go and have a look at kind of like weapons that they might have had, things like that?
I mean, so in terms of going to places, it's all about the locations. So I've obviously been all around Edinburgh and thought through every possible place that I would like the action to take place. Went down on a couple of tours into the tunnels. There's a Lady Mary's Close, I think it's called, which you can go down into the tunnels and get a sense what they're like under there. And then in the other books, it goes off to different parts of the Highlands for the much bigger staged battles that needed to take place outside of the city. And I've set those on one of the Hebridean Islands that I know very well, and in a very quiet part of the Northwest Highlands in the Knoydart Peninsula. So they're places that I've researched properly like that. In terms of the history and the weapons, no, I must admit most of that's been done online, or over time I've seen those sort of weapons in museums and castles, and know what I'm looking at and know what it's about, and just making sure I get some of that as accurate as I can with the latest online information.
Should come and visit the Royal Armouries in Leeds.
Oh yeah,
Perfect place to research stuff like that, and they even act out sort of sword fights and things.
really. And that would all be British arms, or do they have some of the other ancient
They do them
races?
all over. There's a whole Oriental gallery.
Oh, okay. Wow, right. Yep, that sounds
And I think
interesting.
they're having chariot racing soon, or they've had chariot racing recently.
Oh, okay. So that's obviously a wing, as it were, or part of the Royal Armoury from London.
It's a whole museum, yeah. It's
Right.
part of the group.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Sam, I couldn't remember it. I'm not gory with it today. Sam has just reminded me that Jane Isaac buried a pig shoulder in concrete and
I
then
was
dug
just
it
trying
up
to read
for
that.
a year.
Sorry, cock it up. Been there for a
And
year.
that was my new favourite answer, and I just couldn't bring it to mind.
Oh, good heavens. Yeah, I can imagine amongst the criminal genre, there's going to be a few things that have been checked out.
Apparently concrete, that things don't decompose, or things like they stay preserved in concrete, and she wanted to see if it was true.
Right. Wow.
And
And for
that's
12
commitment,
and
isn't it?
to do it for 12 months, that's
Yeah,
the most amazing thing, to actually take that research for that length of time to be accurate. Wow.
I know.
I mean,
Real
yeah,
commitment.
people have obviously got storylines way ahead in their minds, so when they're actually going to write these.
And as a science teacher, I appreciate the experiment, like the science experiment that went on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you know, did she use that in a book then? Has that been in a
Yeah,
story?
I think she did. Yeah, she said so in the chat. I think she did. Aggie wants to know if you could translate one of your books to any language in the world, what audience would you choose?
Oh Lord. I suppose, well, if you're going to be commercial about it, would probably be Mandarin or something. If you're going to be more romantic about it, it would be one of the countries that the other planets are set in. So Italian for the scenes that are in Rome, or maybe into Norwegian or something for the Viking part of the book. That would be fun. Yeah, probably. These are crazy. These are questions you could never prepare for in advance.
I did tell you can't prepare in advance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, love it. Yeah, I think I would go in Norwegian if you had to give me just one, because the Vikings are my main planet in all of this, and it would be nice for that to feel that the Norwegian readers were enjoying some of their heritage.
Good answer. How much do you plot out in advance? Because your books are very complicated.
I do plot. Yeah, there is, and I do plot out completely. I had this question at an event in Edinburgh a couple of weeks back, and we found out the two of us who were doing the event and the person asking the questions all had utterly different styles, and the lady asking the questions sort of let it flow as it almost made it up as she went along, and I've no idea how she crafts a story in that way. I have to have it all very structured in advance. So I generally build a scene plan all the way through, and I did that for book 2, The Blood Isles, and for book 3, and it did come together quite quickly, and in the end didn't vary from that too much. I sort of went out for a few walks, came back, put things down, changed them around a bit over a couple of days, and had sort of 52, 55 scenes written out with just a few lines of each, and I think that really the structure stuck fairly well, and I've got that at the moment for book 4. So but yeah, it's really hard trying to pull there's a big cast and there's quite a lot going on, there's different little subplots, and one of the things that made it simpler for me with the first 2 books is because of the delay in publishing. I was writing book 2 and indeed some of book 3 before the book before had been published. So I was able to keep popping back and saying to my publisher, "Can I just make a change in the book prior to it, because it needs to link into this thing I want to write about in the next book." So I was able to do that. But now the timelines are such that they were sort of out there, set in stone. So I'm only just getting through the early parts of book 4, and book 3 is all done and dusted, ready to go. So anything I think up in book 4, I can't make an earlier change now. And sometimes they're just quite small things. Just before we pressed go with book 3, I said, "Look, I need a character to give another character a phone number. I just need, it's 3 lines I'll change so that they pass the phone number, because that phone number is suddenly very important in book 4. So there does need to be, I do find I have to think quite hard and structure it quite well.
Sam wants to know if you've been sucked into the Wordleverse yet.
Not at all. I have no idea what Wordle is, to be honest. I see these things coming up on Twitter with various numbers. I've not got a clue what it is. So the answer is no. I don't know whether I'm missing anything. Just that. If people think I'm missing something, then tell me now and I'll try and have a look at what it might be about. I've seen 1 or 2 author friends on Twitter getting very into it, so there must be something there.
You may be best avoiding it. Every day there's a 5-letter word that you have to guess, and you get 6 guesses.
Oh, I see. Okay, there's a quiz show a bit like that, I'm sure, isn't there?
Okay. And it's kind of like Mastermind. It tells you, it color codes it, so it tells you if your letter is right and in the right place, or right but in the wrong place with different colors.
Okay. Yeah, it's when I haven't understood when people post things. They put a number or a couple of colors down and say that's what they achieved today, and I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, so the colors are like where you've gone right or wrong, if that makes sense.
Okay. To be honest, I have enough words. I'm surrounded by enough words each day trying to write these books without getting into a word game as well.
It's a good procrastination thing.
Yes. Yeah, it probably doesn't complement the actual writing of a book.
I do Wordle most days. I'm on a really good streak at the moment, and I nearly missed it today. Took me all 6 guesses. And Sam says she does Wordle and Hurdle most days. Hurdle's guessing a song from its opening.
Oh, right. Oh, Lingo, that's it. Exactly that. I've seen a few episodes of Lingo, and when you describe Wordle, it sounded like that. Yeah.
Never heard of the TV show.
Yeah, just the same idea. They have about 4 guesses to turn over the number of letters and get a word.
So as a history buff, do you have a favourite period of history?
The ancient world. I think that comes through. I love all of that. I'm fascinated by that, and I'm actually most fascinated by the sort of the ancient world that a lot of us know very little about. there are such amazing cities, whole cities that have just disappeared, and with names that have been lost, and you just sometimes come across them in books, or you find a program about archaeology where they're talking about some of these beautiful places, a lot of it in the Middle East and around that sort of area. And that fascinates me, because I just think, how amazing that these whole cultures have just come and gone and disappeared, and we don't really know anything about them. So I like that. Yeah, once not so much into my normal British history that got taught at school, the Elizabethans and the Tudors and the Stuarts and all that. I like the ancient stuff, and at the world level, I really, the further away that culture, almost the more interesting.
So tell us about your author events that you've got coming up, because you're going to Noir at the Bar. Right?
Yeah, actually, that's the only one. Oh no, and I've got one at the library at the moment. I've just been doing a few. They're just starting to, get into them. The books came out during the pandemic, the first two, so it was not possible to do very much. But I've enjoyed what I've been doing. But as I say, they've been quite a mixed bag because of where people see the book sitting. So I've done this horror podcast. The festival that I attended a couple of weeks back was a big Edinburgh or Scotland science fiction and fantasy festival, which I felt a little bit out of my depth with some of what the other authors were talking about in terms of levels of magic and things like that. Noir in the Bar is on Thursday, which is a real sort of Edinburgh institution where crime writers get together and read snippets from their books and answer a few questions. And I was lucky enough to have an event in Waterstones as well a couple of weeks back in Kirkcaldy, which was sort of a dream come true. The Scotland Waterstones have been unbelievably supportive and have my books in all their stores, and they're just beginning to start doing author events again after the pandemic. And so it was really amazing to actually sit in a store after hours and talk to people. I think through their support, quite a lot of my sales have been in paperback form, and whereas a lot of debut authors' sales will always come through the ebook route. And so I've count myself quite lucky, because I think when you start out and you're dreaming about being an author, you do think about having a book actually in bookshops, and you do think about being able to call into a bookshop and sign the book. You never really dream about how many ebooks you're actually going to sell. It's not got the same romance to it. So I've had some great experiences. So I'm hoping after the summer, when book 3 comes out, to line up quite a few more events, and probably Blackwell's and Waterstones are interested in doing a few events with book 3. So that would be brilliant. And if you know of some more crime ones, I'd love to. There's the big Bloody Scotland Festival, which I want to try and get more involved with, which would be a perfect place for these books.
Are you going to the Harrogate Crime Festival?
I'm not, and people say I should maybe be doing so. It's sort of become quite new to me at the moment on that front. So I'm wondering whether I should make a sudden decision and go, because it's quite soon, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the end of July.
It's the end of July, yeah. I wonder whether I should. I mean, obviously I'm not involved in it, so it would just be to go and take it in and build some connections. So I might well do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm intending to go on the Saturday. I was also intending to go to the Bradford Literature Festival, which is on Sunday.
Oh yes.
And has some really good stuff on it. I've got tickets, but I've got coronavirus, so I don't imagine I'll be going.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah. You just have to wait and see, won't you?
Yeah, I'm imagining I might still be positive by Sunday. Potentially, I might not be. We'll see.
No, I'd certainly like to try Harrogate and Bloody Scotland, because I'd like to build the connections with the authors and readers in the crime world. Because I think I'm not an author who sat down and said I'm going to write a crime book. I'm an author who sat down and decided had a story that I wanted to tell, and it turns out that there's quite an element of crime in it, and it's been embraced like that, and so I'd like to do that. It was helped last year. So last year at the Edinburgh Book Festival, a tweet. I went into the Edinburgh shop that's there where the books were on sale, And the staff said, I went in on the second day, I think. The staff said, oh, that someone's been in and purchased a couple of the Wolf Mile yesterday already, and they were smirking a little bit. And I said, oh, that's great. And they said, yeah, it was Ian Rankin. He bought two copies and tweeted about it. And he hadn't tagged me in, but he'd put up a picture of the Wolf Mile and said, first book at the Edinburgh Festival bought. And so I was thinking, brilliant. That's a definite good step into the crime community.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Bloody Scotland would work really well for you. I think they have like a torchlit procession at one point.
Okay. Yes, yes, I've
That'd
seen
have
that.
a
They
very,
do, don't they? Yes. Yeah, that would be perfect, wouldn't it? I must try and push as hard as I'm not very good at being self-promoting and pushing, but I must try. See if I
They're
can
really
get myself on there.
friendly. They are worth getting in contact with. They are a really friendly festival.
Yeah,
Bloody
no, I will.
Scotland. There are other ones, like I Write in Glasgow, but that's been on.
Okay.
And the Edinburgh Book Festival. I'm not really up on Scottish book festivals though, but there will be more. Patricia is your best bet.
I know, yeah, she's
our highest
things.
all things knowledgeable in Scotland. So
yeah, no, she's a great contact.
And Scottish care packages. She sends them out to people.
All right.
Yeah, she's just amazing. She says she's going to see you on Thursday at Noir at the Bar. She also says you were great at Chimera.
Yeah, I don't know quite know how you pronounce it. Chimera. That was the fantasy sci-fi festival, which was that was a lot of fun. I was talking with another author whose book's plot has sort of foxes dressed up with machine guns. So we didn't have a great amount in common in terms of the books, but it was we had a lot in common in terms of how we write and all that sort of thing, and what we're inspired by. So that was fun.
Have you ever read Ben Aranovic's books?
Do you know? I haven't. And I think that's one I ought to be looking at. I know that's on the. I know one or two people have mentioned him. I'm cursed with being quite a slow reader, and I also find it quite hard to read other people's works when I'm really focused on my own writing. So I have these windows when I'm not writing where I try and read, and I think you meet other people and they are throwing off titles left, right, and centre that they've read constantly, and I just don't manage to get through that amount. And I do feel, I don't know why. It's like being a slow or a fast eater. I just seem to take my time over a book, and so I plod through the ones I can. I have to be really selective about making sure I'm reading the best thing that I'm going to enjoy and it's going to help with my writing.
Oh, that's good. I couldn't find you on Twitter. Sam said she followed you on Twitter earlier today.
Oh, great, Sam. Thank you.
I shared our promo on Twitter and I couldn't find you. I'm sorry.
Yes, all right. I'm not sure. Yeah, I saw a couple of others. I think it's because maybe people are trying with the CF, and I've had to put the CF at the end and the Barrington at the front. I can't remember why someone else had taken CF Barrington already.
Yeah, I mean that could be it. It could be something like that. So one of our other group favourite questions is your most memorable moments as an author.
My most memorable moments as an author. Do you know, I've been lucky enough in a sense to feel I've had a few of them in quite a short time, and mostly because of the support of the big shops in Scotland. So for both books, I found them in the windows of big Waterton stores. It was in the window of Princes Street West End store next to Richard Osmond and John le Carre, that sort of thing. And more often than not, I found them on the tables at the front, again next to just the household names. And I think that I just find that really special in quite a private way. It's not a big thing or make a big noise about, but going into a shop and finding yourself next to them. Albeit I know I'm an imposter in a sense. I won't be up there with these big names for long, but having them there just to be able to see and to take a photo of as a memory and seeing it in the windows of these places has been really, really special. It's sort of like if I couldn't write another book, I feel I've had a bit of a whirlwind experience like that over this last 18 months. It's been great.
Sam has said thank you for a great hour. She's got more books to read.
Oh, yes. Good heavens, it's an hour already.
It's nearly an hour. We've got about 5 minutes.
That's amazing. I've been prattling on. I don't know where that's gone, but that's wonderful.
It's going well. It's going well. I think you've done a good job of like informing people about the world that you created and the books. Obviously, if Sam's saying more books to read,
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm really pleased. Thank you, Sam. I hope you like them. Yeah, I found it. I'm growing in confidence in being able to speak about my writing and speak about a quite complex story. While I was writing them, or earlier on, people would ask, "Oh, what's your book about?" And I find it really hard to explain. How do you just very briefly start trying to talk about ancient Greeks on rooftops and Vikings in tunnels and all that sort of thing without it sounding a bit stupid? So I've found that quite challenging. A friend came up with a pithy one-liner actually, which I quite like, and it got used again by my publishers, which was simply that it's Fight Club with swords. And I started using that when people asked me what's the story. I knew they only wanted a 4-word answer or whatever. So that's a neat summing up.
That is a good summing up. But yeah, excellent. So remind people, show off the covers again if people want to go and buy them.
So The Wolf Mile, that's book 1 with just this awesome, they seem to have taken on basically the sky has become the thing about each of these books. Took ages to work out the cover of this because they wanted to show Edinburgh, they wanted to show the history, but they wanted an image that also showed it was a modern setting. And so they put the road in with the tarmac road with the lines at the front, which isn't accurate to Edinburgh, but it's sort of in one sort of pithy image shows that it's in the modern day, but with a lot of history. So that's Wolf Mile. And then because the sky had gone down really well, they did a similar thing for this with the Blood Isles. So it shows the Hebrides, little the Hebridean islands in the sea, and the again the sky. And there's an even more crazy sort of neon sky over Carlton Hill for the Hastening Storm, which comes out on 1st of September. So they're nice. I really love them, and they look colourful on a bookshelf, which is lovely.
And it's been fabulous. Can people buy signed copies of the books from you, or?
I don't have the facilities to do that myself, but no, I don't. I've been around quite a lot of Waterstones in Scotland and signed them, so there's a few signed copies around. But no, I'm afraid I don't think haven't got the facilities to send them out myself.
Fair enough. All that's left to say then is thank you.
Thank you ever so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
See you Thursday.
Yes, Noir at the Bar. If anybody's anywhere near Edinburgh, do come along at 7 o'clock to it's the Thistle Theatre in Thistle Street in Edinburgh. It's a lot of fun, a real criminal institution. Criminal fiction institution, maybe I should say. That's a slightly better way of putting it.
Maybe slightly better. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks very much.